Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nayaswami Padma, and I'm here today to bring you the excerpt from the original teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In this case, I'm still reading out of Swami Kriyananda's autobiography, The New Path, in the section where he writes about his years living with Yogananda. And this is still in the chapter called Work versus Meditation. The excerpt says, "For some time during my first year at Mount Washington, I was disturbed by periods of almost obsessive sleepiness during meditation. I no sooner sat for meditation than the nodding began. One day I felt particularly joyous inside and was looking forward eagerly to the evening's meditation. But to my immense disgust, the moment I started to meditate, drowsiness descended on me again like a thick fog. I was furious. 'Since you insist on so much sleeping,' I scolded my mind, 'I'm not going to let you sleep at all.' I stayed up all that night, typing letters, walking about the grounds, drinking tea, anything to beat down my insistent craving for sleep. When daylight came, I went out and worked hard in the garden. By the following evening, my mind had become so submissive, terrified, I imagine, lest it be abused with sleeplessness a second night, that my meditative drowsiness ceased completely, never to bother me again for many months." This is a very important teaching for those of us who meditate. I know for myself, and I'm sure for most everyone that I know, there is always a test that comes at some point with drowsiness, with sleepiness. And how do we keep ourselves from falling asleep during our meditation, nodding off? I can tell you so many meditations I sit in, even to this day, where when you open your eyes even briefly, you see your friends just sort of nodding off. And it's the nodding that's the sure clue to the fact that they are inwardly asleep and not alert with the wide awake energy and attention that meditation requires. And so I know for myself, I didn't go to the extreme that Swami Kriyananda went with telling his mind that it wasn't going to be allowed to sleep, lest it fall asleep during meditation again, sort of speaking to the mind as if it's another person within us, and certainly sticking to his guns. But for myself, I promised myself that if I become aware of the fact that I'm starting to feel sleepy, that I would rather stop that particular meditation and try again after having been rested than to create the habit of falling asleep during meditation. It's a deadly habit, and it is so very hard to overcome that particular habit. Of course, ideally, we're not ever falling asleep during meditation, but most of us deal with that, periods of that at some point or another in our meditative lives. And so feeling okay about disciplining ourselves in whatever form it takes, rather than to allow the habit to persist. Because what happens to most people who have actually fallen into that habit, they're no longer aware of the fact that they're sleeping during meditation. And if somebody prods them awake, they think, how rude is that? Why are they nudging me during my meditation? I wasn't sleeping, not aware that it was the nodding off that surely gave them away, because the habit had become so overpoweringly consistent in their lives that it took over. It became meditation. And of course, being asleep is not meditation. Yogananda would sometimes, before his lectures that he would give, he'd come running out and say, how feels everybody? Awake and ready. How is everybody? Awake and ready. It takes that kind of alertness, awakeness. In fact, if sleep is a challenge that you're dealing with, why not try that? When you sit down to meditate, ask yourself that question. How feels everyone? You feel like you're talking to yourself. Awake and ready. It's worth it. Whatever it takes, find your own solutions to it. But as I said, it's better to stop a sleepy meditation than it is to continue in creating that sleepy habit for ourselves. I remember there was this one story I heard, if I can try to recollect it, but it was a young disciple of Yogananda's who came down to breakfast, and he said, you didn't sleep today. You didn't meditate this morning. You didn't meditate today. And she said, oh, but Master, I meditated a full hour. And he said, you were unattentive in your meditation, and therefore you weren't actually meditating. So that's such an important thing to remember, that when we fall asleep in our meditation, it does not count for meditation time. It does count for sleepy time. And so finding ways to maybe having shorter meditations, maybe having different times of the day that we're meditating, finding those ways in which we can remain alert, awake and ready, fully conscious and focused during our meditations. Joy to you. And we're starting this week to have these programs on Tuesdays and Thursdays of every week only. And so I will see you again on Thursday. Blessings. Bye-bye now.